I am very pleased to have a friend from way back when, Jennifer Ould. She is currently the administrator for academic affairs at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And and from what I found also, are you still coordinator for Acts Consortium?
I am. I am. That's
Okay,
the Association of Chicago Theological Schools.
right. How's that all going for you?
That's good. It's something I've been doing for almost 10 years now, I think, in the Acts position. Um, Chicago has more seminary students than any city in the world but Rome. And
Wow.
it's a claim to fame that few seem to know, but there are more than 12 seminaries in the Chicagoland area currently, and 12 of them have joined over 50 years ago, created the Acts Consortium, and it's a Catholic seminaries and Protestant seminaries and progressive seminaries and conservative seminaries and a, a whole wide range, pretty much the whole range of Christendom is represented by the ACT seminaries. And for someone who grew up as a fundamentalist, where we didn't necessarily cooperate with the other independent fundamentalist Baptist church down the road, much less anybody else.
Right.
It has been a minor miracle at the least to me to watch the presidents and deans of all of these schools come together twice a year to meet, to respect each other, to appreciate each other, to create functional agreements, to share library services, to have a cross registration plan between their schools that has been in place for decades, and to work together to support and encourage each other.
I did not realize until last night the significance of us talking together today because
Mm,
it's 9/11,
it
and
is.
24 years ago was a major change for the country.
Mhm.
Where were you and how did you react to
Mm.
what was going on?
I had moved to North Carolina at that point, and um, I moved in 2000 to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I was working at what at the time was known as Piedmont Bible College.
Right.
And it was the school that my parents and all of my aunts and uncles attended, and many of my cousins. And I was working in the development office, and I remember one of the IT workers came in, colleagues came in and said that a plane had hit one of the World Trade Towers. And I said, like, well, how big was the plane? I mean, and I don't think he knew. I did not recognize it as quite the, um, I didn't recognize it as an intentional act at that point.
Right.
And then a few minutes later, he came in and said, a second plane has hit the other tower, and we've got the TV up in a classroom. And I went down and sat with colleagues, and I don't remember us talking much at all. I do vividly remember the feeling in my gut when the first tower fell. And I was sure I had never watched that many people die live.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and You're right. It's a day that changed a lot.
There are significant moments in our life journey that
Hmm.
we have to experience. Uh, this one for me, I was in Hawaii at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was at 6:30 in the morning Hawaii time when the second plane hit the second tower. And I had a friend of mine, he called me at 6:30 in the morning and said, "Wake up, Jeff." I was like, "What?" He was like, "Turn your TV on now."
Mm-hmm.
And so I turned the TV on as I was seeing the video of the second plane hitting the tower. And I was like, "What is going on here?" You know?
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. The odd thing is that um, I started a new job working at a TV station in Honolulu,
Hmm.
and it was the Thursday prior to this date that it happened, which was a Tuesday. And I was like, "What's going on?" So we went through a lot of changes, and because of the changes and everything, I eventually became the TV station manager.
Mm.
Lo and behold, you know.
Wow.
But yeah, it was very significant. You know, those kind of days,
Mm.
because I was old enough to remember when President Kennedy was
Mm.
assassinated and all of that. So remember those things quite well.
I
Um,
remember the day the Challenger exploded.
yeah, oh yeah, that was another
Hmm.
significant
Yeah.
one too. Sure.
Yeah.
Um, there was a quote that got my attention, and I wanted to
Okay.
start out with this. Um, when you were posting about a friend of yours on Facebook, you wrote the following: those of us who came of age in conservative evangelicalism and fundamentalism have had many different journeys. Some of us doubled down, some of us just said, heck with it. I cleaned it up. Heck with it. And some of us spent a lot of years and money trying to get to the heart of what was there. I would put myself in that last group, and my friend Bo, who I met in seminary over 10 years ago, as well. In sharing that particular story, what did you mean by being in that last group?
Mm. I think part of it is, well, I mean, anyone who knows me and has followed me on social media, friends, I clearly didn't double down. Um, and while I have a great deal of respect for the journeys and the decisions of the folks I know who just threw up their hands and said, I'm done with it. Um, I explored my way away and at many points didn't realize where I was till I turned around and saw what was behind me.
Yeah, right.
And that was a lot of time. There are a few things I can point to that were significant contributors to that journey. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Specific books I stumbled on and read that spoke to me at the particular moment I was in and opened my eyes to other things or connected me with other people, shifted certain things for me. People I met along the way, specific people I met. Many of those people are still in generally conservative evangelicalism.
Right.
I and yet I would say they were part of my journey out of it.
Mm-hmm.
They might, some of them might rue that, um, uh, and that's bittersweet. That makes me sad. Um, but I think for me, a big part of, and when I went to seminary, when I chose to go to seminary, that choice was definitely a part of this journey. But I didn't know where the journey was going. I was just exploring ideas and my faith both personally and in the realm of the larger community. And uh, I found some encouragement around my thinking about theology and the Bible, and encouragement specifically to go to seminary. And at that point in my life, when some of that, when I was deciding to go, I had concluded that, I mean, graduate school was something that had never been off my radar, but I didn't know enough about what I wanted to go for to make the investment.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I decided to go to seminary, I thought, whatever I do with it, in air quotes, and that usually means whatever kind of salary I can make because I have this degree,
Right.
or whatever I do with it, uh, I don't think I will ever feel like it was a waste of time for me to put these years into learning more about God and my faith and the church.
Hmm.
And I don't think that I'll ever feel like that was wasted.
Right.
And so that's the kind of mindset that I went into it with. And while there have been times when, as I have gotten to know other, that was my first introduction to the Acts Consortium, because the seminary I attended was an evangelical school in the Chicagoland area that was a part of Acts. And while I did not participate in the cross registration while I was a student, um, their participation in Acts mattered to me,
Hmm.
and it meant something. But it was and is one of the most well-regarded evangelical seminaries in the country. And as I've gotten to know other schools, I have had some twinges and thought, well, this program in that school probably would have suited me better. Might have taught me some things I didn't get at Trinity. But I've also thought, you know, um, as I have explored my way into different theological directions, there were many seeds of that planted at Trinity. At the time I was there, there were, while all of the professors, I would say, were in the broad conservative evangelical range, there were a lot of different perspectives and points of view represented. There were staunch neo-reformed Calvinists on faculty, and there were folks who were adamantly not that.
Hmm.
And there were folks who came out of more of the holiness movement, and there were folks who were egalitarian, and there were folks who were complementarian, and they were all friends, and they all respected each other and showed us their respect for each other and maintained a kind of space for disagreement in fellowship.
Hmm.
And that was a bit novel for someone who grew up in fundamentalism, where um, there are historians that would disagree with me, but to my mind, the kind of one thing that marks out fundamentalism, in Christian fundamentalism from any other branch of even conservative Christianity, is separatism.
Yeah.
It's a commitment to separating from those we don't agree with. And there's even divisions about what kind of separatism, like just how much disagreement is required for that separation. But separatism to me is the distinguishing mark. And so to be in a place with a lot of conservative evangelical faculty who really did not function in the realm of separatism, I think was a beautiful thing for me to experience. Um, and as I've looked at my journey, I have been grateful that everywhere I changed my mind, and everywhere I changed my heart, and everywhere I changed my life, I did so in light and in confidence that I was doing so engaged with the strongest arguments.
Hmm.
Um, there are so many, I'm not sure I had a professor that I don't deeply disagree with now
Hmm. Right.
about something significant,
Right.
if not many things significant. I also don't think I ever had a professor that I don't still respect. And when I have the opportunity to engage, don't still have a warm and mutually respectful relationship with.
Hmm.
And I am deeply grateful from that. They don't agree with me. I don't expect them to.
Right.
Um, and but they don't seem to necessarily expect me to agree with them either.
Right.
And we still have a great deal of warmth and respect for each other. And I am grateful. I think I might have had that experience in a window of time that was closing for that kind of experience,
Right.
where organizations with that kind of diversity could still hold together in this country,
Hmm.
um, in the religious world in particular. And so I am grateful for that. And
Right.
I'm grateful that when someone says, have you really thought this through? I can say, not only do I overthink everything, which if you knew me, you would know, uh, and can say, yes, I've thought this through. I have thought it through, engaged with some of the strongest thinkers of this area,
Hmm.
and in challenged and prodded by them. And that doesn't mean I've thought about everything. I'm still learning. That's
Right.
part of what they taught me. I'm still learning. But yes, have I really thought this through? Yes, I
Yeah.
have thought it through.
I have found out that learning is a lifelong process, you know.
It is
And
very much so.
I have come up with a slogan that says the person who stops learning, the only person who stops learning is a dead one.
Hmm. I'm
You
not
know.
even sure that's true, though. I don't know that we don't get to keep learning in the afterlife.
True.
I
True.
kind of hope we do. There's
Yeah.
enough to learn. I mean, I'm
Sure.
not sure we could ever come to the end of everything there is to learn.
Yeah. Can you imagine being in a classroom in heaven and Jesus is your teacher? Hello.
I, yep.
Hey, the one thing that I thought of while you were sharing about separatism, is that the, would you say, is that the instigator for the uprise and the constant recycling of Christian nationalism?
Mm, I don't know that I haven't thought about it in particular conjunction with that. And actually I'm thinking out loud right now, but I would say no, because Christian nationalism creates a whole lot of bedfellows that fundamentalists of ages past would have never sat for. The separatism would not have allowed the kind of cooperation that I see exist within Christian nationalism.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, because I was talking with my mentor. Uh, his name is Dr. Randy Furushima,
Hmm.
and I call him Pastor Randy because
Hmm.
we've been friends for so long.
That's wonderful.
Um, he uh, he and I, when we get together, and in fact, when we talked the other day, there was a discussion about the journey of the Christian in today's society as opposed to what it was back then. And one of the questions that he had asked me one time, it still is in my mind, is that he asked, "What happened to the Bible college that you went to? What happened to it? Why did it die?" And I said, "Well, I said the only reason that I have come up with is that it's no longer appropriate. They have never taken the uh, attempt to the constant changing of the culture in trying to relate to young people. And so death was the natural outcome. That's the way I perceived it. I don't know if you do, but that's, you
Um,
know,
I would say I would nuance it. I was there a lot longer than you were.
right,
I grew up there
right,
and was there years some years after you and
right.
much closer to the end. Um, I would say that towards the end there were some leaders who did try to adjust to appeal to younger, newer the students who were coming through at that point. And the way in which they did that felt like a betrayal to many of the people who'd invested their lives in the place.
Hmm.
I think there are they made many changes that I would generally affirm, but did them in a way that I felt was wrong and unethical in many cases.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think they betrayed who they were
Mm-hmm.
in the changes and the way they tried to make them. And I think change for an organization is difficult. That's never easy. But I think that there were real failures in that. Um, do I think it would have lasted without them trying to make those changes? No. I think there were ways in which the changes hastened the end.
Yeah.
I also think the bigger picture is the world they served was shrinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The number of Bible colleges in those circles that have closed over the years
Right.
is huge. Um, and and that is part of the death of fundamentalism, I think.
Hmm.
As evangelicalism moved to become more conservative, and the Southern Baptist Convention is an excellent example of that.
Right.
Um, they they didn't bring the separatism with them in the same way.
Hmm.
Um, they've changed the way, or maybe they did, but they just changed the way they thought about it. Because clearly these days cooperation doesn't require any kind of moral uh, standard. Um, Yet there are some issues which, if you change on, they'll have nothing to do with you.
Hmm.
So I think maybe the separatism translated into a different kind of context that I would say is more political than spiritual.
Right.
Um, but but then again, that's me saying it. I know many people who hold to it would insist that it is deeply spiritual for them. Um, I think they're wrong, or I think they're misguided, but they think I am. Um, so I
Well,
that and then one thing that my mother said, and my family are still largely in those circles.
right.
My mother always said, "Well, the founding president and pastor of that ministry said over and over and over again, and was famous for saying everything rises and falls on leadership."
Yeah.
And then she would say, "And it did."
Yeah. Hmm.
And part of what happened while I was there were some exposures of long running abuse situations,
Right.
long running sexual choices that were unethical and
Hmm.
immoral that
Right.
had been hidden for decades
Right.
because leadership could not bring themselves to believe they were true.
Right. Yes.
It wasn't that they didn't know about it, they were told, and they would not believe it
Right.
until they were presented with incontrovertible evidence.
Right.
And I think that destroyed a lot. I mean, everything rises and falls on leadership, and it did. And it wasn't all later leadership. There were problems throughout. I also think, I mean, but this is uh, in large part because of growing up in those circles. Those circles, this fundamentalist Baptist circles, had a very strong authoritarian leadership structure.
Yes.
Um, they didn't necessarily define themselves consciously by that, but it was a defining characteristic of that movement.
Right.
And it's a defining characteristic that has certain parallels with Christian nationalism today, as we know it.
Right.
Um, but I think that that is not a healthy leadership structure for any organization. Um, and that a pastor or a leader who basically has authority both formally and informally over everything,
Hmm.
and no one they are truly authentically accountable to.
Right. Right.
I think, at best you get um, a wise and beneficent king, and at worst you get someone whose blind spots and failures infect the entire organization.
Hmm. Yeah. I've been very blessed to knowing some uh, pastors personally,
Mhm.
and uh, because of the way that they were trying to go in a little bit different direction, trying to nudge away from the strict boundaries that were
Mhm.
set. Uh, they received poison pen letters and
Oh,
were
that's
threatened, and so it was decided that he said, "I'm out of here. There's no reason for me to stay here if I'm being treated like this."
yeah.
You know?
I think that's unfortunately quite common.
Yeah.
Um, Now, whether someone has death threats or not, a little bit different level. Um, but you don't have to make a death threat to make a pretty severe threat.
Yeah. Yeah. How has your perception about God changed through the
Mm.
years?
Um, yeah, it's a really good question. I know when I was little, I don't remember a time I didn't know God, didn't know
Right.
about God,
Right.
and not just know about God, but know God. I think part of that was because my daddy died when I was 3,
Yeah, I didn't know
and
that. And I
yeah,
happened to see that you put it on, I don't know if it was Facebook or something like that. And when
mm,
I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea
yeah.
whatsoever. I'm,
My dad had ALS and died a month after my 3rd birthday,
oh my gosh, I'm so
um,
sorry.
as a very young man. Thank you. Obviously, it was many, many years ago,
Yeah.
but I think because of that, my parents were very intentional about telling me that God loved me and them, that Jesus loved us, that when Daddy died, he was going to heaven to be with Jesus. He was going to
Mm,
heaven to be with God,
right.
and that I could talk to God anytime, anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so, one of my memories of childhood is, sort of rattling out all of my thoughts to God all the time. An internal dialogue with God, who I was taught to call Father. And so I think that connection with my daddy in heaven and my father in heaven, I don't know that I could ever fully separate that.
Mm,
I don't know that it's possible for a human brain to do that,
mm,
um, uh, in light of those experiences. So my early ideas of God, images of God, thoughts of God were a loving, warm, what I might call a grandfather or younger grandfather figure, um, very, uh, very loving. Also, I don't know how much I ever related to God as angry,
mm-hmm.
but I certainly encountered a lot of angry God as I was taught about the Bible
Oh, wow.
and as taught about hell, taught about the angels. I don't know that I don't remember ever being afraid to approach God. I do
Mm,
remember praying to God in a lot of fear during the altar call at a vacation Bible school sermon all about hell with,
sure.
God, I don't know, but please, please, if I haven't done everything, I'm going to do everything. But it wasn't God I was afraid of, it was hell I was afraid of.
Mm,
And I think I had a pretty, um, I don't know, for whatever reasons, whether it was the relationship I had had with my father, which was very close until he died,
right.
that maybe bled over and kept some of that from being. I got punished a lot as a child. It was the 70s, and our family believed in spankings. Only ever, like, not ever out of control, you know, boundaried spankings. I
Yeah.
would never say I was beaten, but I was definitely struck and
Right.
hit. We believed in spankings, and I was um, a stubborn kid, and so I got plenty. Spankings were a very regular thing, but I don't ever remember feeling like God was punishing me.
Mm,
And I'll say I'll credit my parents uh, for that. That the ways in which they punished me never translated over to God must be punishing me.
right.
Um, and I'm grateful for that because a lot of my peers did not have like that message.
Right.
And so the ways in which, I thought, hmm, there was us and we knew God and everybody else who didn't,
Right.
even if they thought they did.
Right.
And I think a lot of my understanding of God, that was the foundation and it grew from there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think even far earlier than anyone in my life would identify, I started understanding God loving other people that we didn't think had a relationship with Him.
Mm-hmm.
I read Madeline L'Engle's journals
Yeah.
by 6th or 7th grade,
Mm-hmm.
and her very clear testimony of conversion and as an Episcopalian. And my gosh, of all the people out there, we certainly didn't think they knew God.
Right.
but she did. And
Right.
her clear testimony of knowing God um, came very clear to me, and I was not ever willing to deny it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the ways that in more recent years I have framed this and come to articulate it is that as I saw, and I think especially as fundamentalists, but maybe all of us, uh, at some point in our lives, we see God coloring outside the lines we thought he drew,
Mm.
and we have to decide what's going on.
Right.
And a whole lot of folks decide, well, then that can't be God because
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't color outside the lines he drew. And the lines he drew are forever and ever. And then it must not be God. It cannot be God, no matter what I see.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are others of us who, and like Peter, when he's told to eat the unclean animals laid out in the sheet before him,
Yeah.
maybe
And
initially say, "Oh no, I'm committed to being faithful,
right.
and you told me not to eat those things. I'm committed to being faithful." And God, I feel like with some gentleness says, "Don't call unclean what I'm calling clean."
Right.
God
Right.
doesn't say to Peter, "No, I never said that," or "I never meant that." Um, he doesn't argue with the tradition, and I don't mean that in any kind of light way,
Right.
that Peter lived, and he doesn't argue with the truth of the tradition. He
Right.
just says, "I'm calling this clean. Don't call unclean what I call clean."
Right.
And um, and I think for me that was a very good um, story
Mm-hmm.
about what it looks like to be willing to follow God outside the lines you thought he drew.
Right.
And that in some way, maybe he did draw, but they aren't what you thought they were,
Right. Right.
um, at least.
Right.
And there's a lot of ways we could frame that, um, and a lot of ways we can talk about the discernment that that requires,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not willy nilly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a deep engagement of faithfulness and trust. The trust it requires to follow God beyond the lines that you thought he drew
Right.
is profound.
Right.
And I would say that is the thing that has caused the biggest problems in my life
Yeah.
with my family and the communities that I was a part of. Is I would not say no, and they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would not say no, that can't be you,
Mm.
Lord, and they did. And so the ways that God has changed for me, and my understanding or with God has changed, is that I see God is involved in a lot more than I did growing up.
Right.
Um, I, I sometimes think I see him more outside of the people who talk about him than I do with them.
Yeah.
At least those who talk about him most.
Right.
Um, that I see him working in all of these places. I don't remember. It's the poet. God plays in 10,000 places. Christ
Mm-hmm.
plays in 10,000 places. That's the
Right.
line. Maybe that's done. I could be wrong. Um, and I have come to understand the most foundational part of God's nature as love. And that has a lot of implications um, for theology, um, uh, some pretty profound ones
Mm-hmm.
as we engage what we believe about the nature of God. Um, yeah, uh, I think God's nature is unchanging,
Mm-hmm.
and God's person is continually changing,
Right.
because that's what I believe the nature of love is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also life. I mean, the only things that are absolutely unchanging are dead.
Yeah.
And even a lot of dead things change, but the uh, the nature of love is responsive. It's a dance. It's an engagement, and thus it's continually in motion,
Right.
not static and not unchanging. Um, So there are days when I don't know what I believe about God, but I do believe that whatever is at the heart of all creation is love,
Mm-hmm.
and not just a diffuse abstract force, but a personally engaged presence, um,
Mm-hmm.
that is the foundation of everything.
In your journey, have you found yourself becoming more contemplative, like I have?
How would you define contemplative? Like, tell me what contemplative looks like for you.
Well, let me tell you, the initiator was the book by Eugene Peterson
Hmm.
called The Contemplative Pastor, I believe.
Hmm.
It was, I picked it up one day and I was like, it just grabbed my interest by the title. So I sat down and I read it, and it was like I almost finished the book in one sitting. That's how
Hmm.
impactful it
Mm.
was.
Mm.
But I think in our journey of faith, that we don't take the time to pause and reflect about where we are in our journey, where God is in our lives in our journey, what our relationships are in our journey, and how much they play a part in our journey. Um, and I think also it gives us a more healthy, my English teachers are gonna roll over in their grave,
Hmm.
a more healthier um, insight as to how we handle life circumstances. Um, I think a lot of times it gives us the time to pause and reflect. Um, Now I do have, I have quiet time every day. Um, and in fact, just to let you know, I was raised a Catholic, but my journey, and I was talking with this with Randy the other day.
Hmm.
He and I, we've had a similar journey in that we've been across the denominational
Mm.
spectrum, a lot.
Mm.
I started out as Catholic, and then I went to Baptist, fundamentalist Baptist, uh, and then I went to Southern Baptist,
Hmm.
uh, and then I went to Foursquare when I moved
Hmm.
out to Hawaii,
Mm.
and I was in that circle for a while. Then I went to Evangelical Covenant,
Hmm.
and then I wound up going to Episcopalian,
Hmm.
and then so I've like covered the spectrum. But
And
the thing,
my current pastor calls that being polyecclesial.
yeah, there you go. But I think he gives you a more rounded understanding
Mhm.
of the procession of God within each of these denominations. And I
The
think
different
that,
traditions.
yeah, and I think a lot of times we get too much involved in it that we don't take the time deliberately
Hmm.
to pause and reflect. Okay, where do I see God in all of this? And why was I chosen to be on this journey that I've been on?
So thank you for that answer. The way I would put it is that I cannot remember a time I was not reflecting and asking those questions.
Hmm.
From my earliest memories as a 3-year-old whose daddy was no longer around, that I was not, but that reflection never felt like a pause to me.
Hmm.
It's always been, if anything, constant movement.
Hmm.
And in that sense, I would say I was born contemplative.
Yeah,
In that reflective, that's part of my wiring, I think.
right.
And I wouldn't put it just to like my father dying, though I think that definitely pushed me further into it, maybe sooner than I would have otherwise.
Right.
I think it is part of my wiring. It's part of what my friends who say I'm overthink everything are talking about, or they've never known me to underthink anything,
Right.
is sort of the way they put it.
Right.
Um, Even when they don't agree with me, they're like, yeah, I may not agree with you, but I've never known you to underthink anything.
Right.
So that in that sense, I think I've always been contemplative. And that's a similar sense in that I struggle with practices of mindfulness
Mhm.
and quieting my mind.
Right.
It does not, I feel like there's always like two trains going in my mind, and I can get one quieted and I realize the other one is 25 miles down the track. And I get that one quieted and this one's 25 miles down the track. And there are a couple of things that help that. One is driving because it occupies one of them. And so I can kind of get a handle on the other one a little better. The other one is looking for beach glass at the lake. And
Oh,
I trains my brain. It's probably the closest I get to what most people would identify as a meditative state.
right.
And I find it very, pretty sure it lowers my blood pressure. I've never checked, but it's something about that. And part of that is being on the water. I think large bodies of water have always had a special, done something special to my spirit
Hmm.
and my soul. And so I intentionally moved close to one,
Right.
close enough to go most every day.
Wow.
Um, so
By
in
the
that
by the
sense,
way,
I'm
may I interject something real
sure.
quick? Um, the pictures that you take
Hmm.
are phenomenal. You have a
Thank you,
really
Jeff.
good eye. You really do.
I will
So,
also say that iPhone has a really good camera, and my neighborhood has really good beaches.
yeah.
So those are usually photos I take in the middle of a run. And so they are not things I take. I don't take 12 pictures to get one good one. I take one, maybe two.
Right.
And usually the only editing I have to do is to straighten the skyline because I'm terrible in the middle of a run stopping. I rarely can get the horizon straight. So I straighten the horizon, but I don't do anything else.
Well, you have a great eye. Oh
So
my
thank
gosh.
you. Like I said, I also live in a beautiful place. So,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
at least I'm biased that way. So yeah, I think there are ways in which I may have become more contemplative. I'm not so sure it has as much to do with my journey. I don't know. I think age slows down some things,
Hmm.
and different life experiences. I've been in therapy for many years, and a lot of that is I'm an external processor, and so the difficulty for me is to being that internal. I need to verbalize, write, maybe, though the verbalizing is easier than the writing.
Hmm.
Um, and that helps me in some ways connect with all of that introspection that's kind of almost always going on already
Right.
in the background,
Hmm.
at least, if not the foreground. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
I
Um,
think I will say, I think my journey has given me a respect for the contemplative traditions
right.
that fundamentalism never had. And part of that is when I was growing up, emotion and experience were bad words when we talked about our faith.
Hmm.
If it wasn't wrong to have emotion, but it was wrong to put too much stock in it. And it wasn't wrong to have experience, but it was wrong to put too much stock in it.
Right.
And the deeper I got into scripture, the deeper I got into the life of Jesus, um, and the deeper I got into church history, the more that is wrongheaded. We are whole people, and God deals with us as whole people,
Hmm.
and our emotions and our experiences are central to that.
Right. Right.
And we are not meant to live a life with God without emotion and experience woven in with our rational minds
Yeah.
and um, and our transrational minds, I
Hmm.
would say, because so much of what's going on in us is not what we think it is.
Right.
The reasons we're doing things are not the reasons we consciously think we're doing them.
Right.
There's a lot more going on. And I think the contemplative traditions and the mystic traditions
Hmm.
connect with the other things that are going on beyond our conscious minds.
Right.
in a different way, and I have much more respect for those traditions.
Right.
And I think I take my conscious mind a little, at least a little less seriously than I used to.
Hmm.
um,
Have you ever heard of Father Richard Rohr?
oh yes.
What?
I have.
Wow. That's all I can say about him. Wow.
Yeah.
He really has stretched my mind and my heart quite a deal, quite a bit. So,
I deeply appreciate much of what he says about our walks with God,
hmm,
and how much he integrates just the reality of how human beings function, with a spiritual walk and spiritual disciplines. Yeah.
yeah. You had mentioned about your mother. What was she like?
Mom is getting ready to turn 80 in March,
Oh,
and she, uh, a lot of people would say she and I are a lot alike. Um, our voices sound very similar. She's an external processor too.
hmm,
Um, and we also both have very good, what I call puzzle solving brains.
hmm,
To the extent that I would say my brain sees everything as a puzzle to be solved.
hmm,
And that's not always helpful, but it's good to know and recognize about myself.
right,
She would have made a good engineer.
hmm,
Um, she, uh, I think she's a wonderful human being. She's
hmm,
a flawed and wonderful human being. And she went through a lot with my father's illness and losing him. And
yeah.
she has now been widowed 3 times in her life.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think she is one of the people who is staunchly conservative,
Hmm,
religiously and politically.
hmm,
Um, she also has a lot of emotional relational intelligence.
yeah.
Um, I wish I trusted her voting as much as I trust her engagement with real life people.
Right.
Um, because I would bring any one of my friends I could introduce her to, and they would walk away feeling seen and loved, I believe.
Right.
Um, and yet,
Yeah.
um, it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
No, and that's true of to varying degrees of most of the members of my family.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I hate to say this, but your city has been in the news a lot lately.
not just lately.
Yeah, not just lately.
Yeah.
Um, what's the situation and environment like now?
I mean, a lot depends on the neighborhood you're in.
Okay.
A lot has always depended on the neighborhood you're in.
Right.
One of the things that people don't necessarily understand about Chicago is that it has been for since its founding, it was founded by a black man, a freed black man.
Right.
Uh, Chicago has always been one of the most diverse cities in the country. But the diversity that we have as a city in the modern era, in the last 100, 200 years, um, is a patchwork quilt. And some of that was redlining and still is a informal redlining where people aren't shown houses in certain neighborhoods because of their race, because of their ethnicity. That still happens. That's been proven, and not just in Chicago, but it does still happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think it happens less and less, but it does still happen. But in the days when that was overt, and there were literal red lines drawn on the map.
Sure.
So there are traditionally Jewish communities that are still traditionally Jewish communities, and they're there because of redlining.
Right.
And there are communities that were Jewish, and because of the complexities of race, as Black folk moved in, Jewish folk fled. And now there are Black churches that have spent decades in buildings that were built as synagogues,
Mm-hmm.
which is a both beautiful and tragic part of the Chicago story to me.
Right.
So you have we're divided because of redlining, but we're also divided because of choice.
Right.
Because when Ukrainians came to Chicago and more Ukrainians came, they wanted to live next to the Ukrainians from back home that they already knew. And so you have Ukrainian Village, and you have Pilsen, which is a largely Mexican neighborhood, and you have Chinatown, and you have various parts of the city that have their roots in these immigrant communities that wanted to eat the same food and wanted the same food in their grocery stores. And there's sort of and I think that's also beautiful. Um,
Right.
it's wonderful in that way. And in as the city has grown, some of those neighborhoods got invested in and taken care of, and others got disinvested in, not just not invested in, but the investment was pulled out of these neighborhoods.
So
And
they
that's,
weren't just ignored. They were like,
yeah, repairs weren't made. They were intentional design. Uh, so the ability of homeowners in our traditionally Black neighborhoods
hmm,
to get a home equity loan
yeah,
is very low. So they can't continue to do improvements on their properties.
right.
Um, it's been that way both publicly and privately for generations, and that's where you can overlay that with the neighborhoods that have the most struggles with violence
Hmm.
are the neighborhoods that have been disinvested in. And so there are neighborhoods in Chicago that are violent. I have friends who live and work in those neighborhoods
Ooh.
and love those neighborhoods.
Hmm.
A lot of the folks that I know are pastors because I have been in and working in seminaries pretty much my entire time in the Chicagoland area. But those pastors I have deep respect for, and the work that they do and the work that people in their communities are doing to resist and fight the violence, and to also call out the less obvious violence of disinvestment. And there's two kinds of political violence. One is real obvious, and the other one likes to hide in budgets and in legislation and
So
in
it's a
certain kinds of criminal law.
so it's like a subtle undertow that's happening.
It's not even subtle. I mean, it's if you listen to the right people, or if you listen hard at all, you know what's going on and you hear about it. Um, but if you live in certain neighborhoods, you can ignore it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of right now. A lot of the reduction in gun violence has been real. We had a spike during the pandemic, and everything has been gradually reducing and more dramatically reducing the last couple of years,
Hmm.
even in those neighborhoods that are more troubled by violence, and particularly gun violence.
Right.
Um, and and then you have right now, we're having gorgeous weather. So you have this two things happening. Chicago knows how to enjoy a nice day better than any southern town I've ever been anywhere near. You have people out in our parks. We have tons of parks. People out on the lakefront, people out walking their dogs, people out and about
Hmm.
enjoying life here, enjoying the neighborhoods,
Right.
enjoying their everything that Chicago has to offer. And at the same time, you have some communities that are almost locked down because people are afraid to leave their houses because of the ICE raids, um, and the ICE incursions in the city, and
I,
the lack of respect for um, the law in those raids. They don't give you time to show a warrant, and it's a scary time for a lot of people. I um, personally, I don't have to worry about that much because I look the way I do.
right.
But I work with people, and I have neighbors, um, and friends who are going about their lives for the most part, though in some areas, in some neighborhoods in particular, a lot of people are not showing up for work, and not leaving their houses
Yeah.
because they are terrified.
Right.
And so that's the two things that are currently happening. Is it's beautiful weather, beautiful day, This is some of Chicago's nicest time of year.
Yeah.
Um, and people are enjoying that. And people are also uh, scared, and people are protesting. Um, Chicagoans tend to show up.
Right.
And that's not every neighborhood. There are a couple of there are some neighborhoods that don't have the same values
Right.
as most of the city. There's some neighborhoods that are mostly they're neighborhoods that are known to be fraternal order of police neighborhoods.
Oh my God.
And your experiences in those particular neighborhoods, there's a handful of them. Um, the fraternal order of police is super problematic in Chicago and has been for years, for
Wow.
decades,
Yeah.
and that sadly continues. Um, but there are definitely the city at large. I, there's nowhere I'd rather live.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a city that people are proud to be a part of. I've never known a place where people get the flag tattooed on them as they're moving away,
Right.
because uh, my brother and his family were visiting back early in the summer, and he's like, "What is this flag we see everywhere with those four red stars and the two blue stripes?" I'm like, "That's the Chicago flag, and you better bet you we're proud of it." It
Yeah.
is. We're proud of it because it is arguably okay, but I'm biased. It's the most beautiful flag, period. It
Hmm.
is just a aesthetically very beautiful flag, and we're proud of it because it's ours. It's our Chicago flag. And so people wear the flag with pride and many times permanently.
Now,
And we're a proud place.
um, I've seen you post, I'm probably going to say this wrong, so forgive me.
Sure.
You go to like a coffee shop or something like that where it's like an open mic and people either share poems or readings and
Are you talking about Outspoken?
yes, thank you. Hello. Yep.
Now, actually, that's at a bar. It's at one of the biggest and best gay bars in the country.
Oh wow.
Um, it's a bar whose owners have been together over 50 years, and they opened in the 70s.
Right.
They opened late 70s, I think, right around the time that MTV launched. They're about the same age as MTV. Um, and it's Art and Pep, um, and wonderful, wonderful men who I am so honored to know. Um, and about 11 years ago now, a friend of Art's drug him to a storytelling show. Storytelling, um, you may have heard The Moth, live true stories
Mm-hmm.
from your life. Storytelling has been a kind of a scene in Chicago for a few decades now, just
Wow.
kind of like improv is a scene in Chicago, and comedy is a scene in Chicago. Storytelling is a scene in Chicago. It tends to be free a lot more than the other options, but it's got a history here. And a friend of Art's took him to a storytelling show, and Art was like, "What are we going to this and why?" And it got done, and he went, "Why aren't we doing this for our community? Because our stories are being erased. Our stories have been erased." And so they came back, and they didn't know if it'd go a month, 2 months. And 11 years later, we are, as far as we know, the only LGBTQ only storytelling show, regular storytelling show in the country.
Right.
Uh, First Tuesday of every month. And it is live storytelling. And with a very few exceptions, there have been a few allies nights, which are all ally stories. Um, and then occasionally, as we have not done as many of those dedicated allies nights, we occasionally have an ally tell, but it's LGBTQ storytelling. And I have just been honored to be a part of it for the past 10 years.
Wow.
Um, and to attend, and then the last couple of years to help make it happen on a very behind the scenes, just organizational admin way. I'm kind of one of the administrative people who
There
collects
you go.
information and gets
Yeah.
hands it, make sure information gets from one place to another.
Sure.
And but it is something I am deeply honored to be a part of. It is a sacred space. I think
Oh, sure.
anytime we tell our stories, we create a sacred space.
Mm-hmm.
I am convinced that true stories save lives.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I know in some of the most difficult seasons of my life, which, my journey, like I said, I never rebelled. It was more of an exploration.
Mm-hmm.
But there were moments where I realized where I was,
Mm-hmm.
and I went, oh, sooner or later, the folks around me and my family are going to realize where I am,
Yeah.
and that's not going to be pretty.
No.
And um, when that happened, which was about a little over 10 years ago now,
Yeah.
um, it was a lot of those folks, their stories helped me understand what was going on in my own life, even as a cisgender straight woman. Um, their stories helped me understand what healthy relationships look like,
Mm-hmm.
um, and what healthy, equitable relationships look like, what respectful, mutually respectful relationships look like.
Right.
Their stories helped me understand how to love and stay in relationship with family who cannot accept all of who you are.
Right.
And their stories have always just um, filled me with awe
Mm-hmm.
at the capacities of love in the human heart,
Sure.
and how much we can endure that nobody should ever have to endure,
Mm-hmm.
and how much love can bloom in the midst of that.
Right.
And again, I've been very honored to be a part of that, as well as to a lesser degree parts of other storytelling shows in the Chicago area. But that one is special. And one of the things we do is there is a organization that has created the only outdoor living history, not living history, but history museum honoring LGBTQ people of history in the country. And that's in the neighborhood that Sidetrack is in. That's the bar we meet at. And the gentleman who has organized all of that every month gives us people whose birthdays are in that month, whose we remember their death in that month, or other significant things that happened from people who were, while they might not have used the names that go into the LGBTQIA list,
Mm-hmm.
whose lives were publicly, to some degree or another, publicly and documentedly queer.
Right.
They were not heteronormative. Um, they were they were different.
Mm-hmm.
They were um, they were not fitting that. They loved. They were um, living lives that were marked by same gender love and or gender nonconformity of some sort, of some significant sort.
Right.
And some of those are better documented than others,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of them have been hidden. There are people who the history books may mention them, but they don't tell you James Baldwin is gay. Well, James
Yeah.
Baldwin was very, very gay,
Yes, he was.
very, very out gay,
Yeah.
uh, unapologetically.
Right.
Um,
Great writer also. Oh my
yes, oh
gosh.
yes. They don't tell you that Bayard Rustin, who was the primary organizer of the March on Washington with MLK, and those that famous day, the day that MLK is famous for, Bayard Rustin was the primary organizer. He was a gay man,
Yeah.
and he stayed out of the spotlight for the cause,
Right.
and he suffered because of it.
Right.
And he will be mentioned in some histories, but not ever as a gay man, or
Right.
almost never as a gay man. Though there was a movie made about him fairly recently that brings that into focus, and was glad to see there. But there are many, many more people in history who whose names we know, but we don't. It's been hidden that they were queer in this way.
Yeah.
Um, that
I
their
don't.
lives,
I'm
didn't
sorry.
fit the norms.
Right.
And so,
Um,
so we tell those stories too, and tell the stories. And I think that is so critically important.
Real quick, I don't know if you have heard any of my story, but this December will be the 10th anniversary of me coming out.
Mm,
And the first person I came out to was myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have said that that is the hardest person you need to come out to. But once you do that, then everything is okay. The
Yeah.
second person I came out to
Hmm.
was my mentor, Pastor
Mm.
Randy.
Who?
And this you'll enjoy this story. When
Hmm.
we before I came out, we had already made an appointment. This was like a couple of weeks before Christmas. We had already made a luncheon appointment
Hmm.
to meet, and uh, so after we did that, then I came out and accepted myself, and then when I got together with Pastor Randy, I said, I need to tell you something very important. He was like, what? And I said, I finally came to the conclusion that I am gay. He paused for a second and then he said, Jeff, you are finally living the life that God had made you to live. And I was like,
Amen.
wow,
Yes.
that's huge, you
Yes.
know? And
And
I've
I'm
never forgotten that. I thought that was one of
I'm
the best
and
things.
and you should never forget that. And I am very grateful for him in your life. And
Yeah.
I am also very sorry that we did not create a world and a community that made it safe for you to come out to yourself and the rest of your friends decades sooner.
Well, I think part of it was that I was abused as a kid, mostly by
Mm,
my mother, uh, but some by my father. My father was in World War II,
mm,
and he was in the Battle of Okinawa.
mm.
And so, growing up in mostly the 60s, they didn't have PTSD.
Well, they did, but they didn't know
Didn't
that's what
know
they
what it
had.
was,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
right.
So my
Shell
father,
shock is
yeah,
what
my
I've
father
heard
crawled
referenced.
into a bottle and never came back out.
Mm, I'm so
Now,
sorry.
I learned this a few years ago. I'm starting to get goosebumps. I
Hmm.
learned this a few years ago listening to a famous actor
Hmm.
relate a story about his father. And his father was in the military and went through the same thing my father did. My father beat up my mother, his father beat up his mother, so forth and so on. I was sitting here listening
Was
to that. It's
Patrick
like,
Stewart?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw that. And when he said PTSD, I went, the light came on. I was like,
Mm,
oh, I get it now, you know.
yeah. Yeah.
And it was amazing, you know. So there was like a total wholeness that came into my life at
Mm,
that moment that I heard that.
mm,
And so it was, you know, so I was carrying the, how do I say this? I was carrying the scars and the trash of living in an abusive uh, household.
mm-hmm,
My older brother was gay.
mm.
He died during the AIDS epidemic,
Ah, I'm so sorry.
and he was initially in the Navy when they didn't have uh, don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
So the Navy found out, they kicked him out,
Mm,
and they gave him a dishonorable discharge, and with the
yeah.
caveat that if you tell your parents and let them know, then we will change it from a dishonorable to a general discharge.
Mm,
So when my brother came back home, he had to sit down with my Marine, former Marine dad and tell it to him. And I just happened to be in my bedroom and I heard the whole conversation.
mm,
And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to tell anybody anything, you know.
yeah.
And it kind of like closed my spirit
Mm.
in that part of my life. So even with you and Steve and
Karen.
Karen and the other Steve and well, all those guys.
Mark. Yeah.
Mark, yeah. Um, I even though it might have been a good environment and everything, I just couldn't deal with it. The other
Well,
thing,
and
the other
I
thing,
would say I
I
would
was gonna
say
go ahead.
we were all in a broader culture that we were both victims of and agents in creating.
Yeah, the
And that's what I'm sorry that for both what we were responsible for and what we couldn't help
right,
as individuals,
right,
that we couldn't create, that we
right,
didn't and couldn't, where we didn't and couldn't
right,
in different ways,
right,
create a space safe enough, you know,
right.
for that
Uh,
for you.
the thing I was gonna say is that I think you remember there was a time when I tried to commit suicide,
I do remember that. I do remember you telling me that.
and that was tough because I was wrestling a lot with
Yeah.
being gay and should I come out,
Mm.
should I not come out, and it was tearing me up inside, and so that was a hard thing for
I'm
me
so
to do.
sorry. I
Yeah,
think that is a much more common story than people realize.
yeah,
And a big part of what changed I often say that my heart and my life changed around LGBTQ people before my theology fully caught up with it.
mm-hmm,
My rational theology fully caught up with it.
right,
I do believe my heart was following Jesus,
mm-hmm,
and and my mind was following Jesus too, and they just don't always have the same pace. Um, but one of the things that I realize, I mean, the discernment that we are given in the fruit of the Spirit, um, when Jesus tells them, "You'll know the spirits by their fruit."
mm-hmm, sure,
Um, and then Paul tells us there's a list. It's the fruit of the Spirit. He lays it out: love, joy, peace, long suffering, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, meekness. Um, and I started realizing that everywhere I saw in the church the teaching that gayness or even just um, an active gay lifestyle, which they
mm-hmm,
meant having a same sex relationship.
right,
Anywhere in the church, I saw the teaching that those were sin and against God. The fruit was death,
mm-hmm, sure,
death of various kinds, but all too often literal death.
yeah,
And when the fruit is so consistently that poisoned, you have to start looking at where it's coming from.
mm-hmm, sure,
And that's where I became convinced that there was a real problem, and something was deeply wrong
right,
with the traditional teaching of the church and the traditional understanding of Scripture. And that's where I started to see fruit in friends' lives who are somewhere between your age and my age, that I was getting to know. And as I saw them accept that God loved them fully as who they were,
mm-hmm,
completely with their sexual orientation and their gender identity, I saw the fruit of the Spirit blossoming in their lives
mm-hmm,
in undeniable ways.
right,
And I saw death fading away, the fruit of death fading away, and the fruit of the Spirit blossoming. And for
yeah,
me, that was the Peter moment. And God put down the sheet.
yeah,
Don't call unclean what I have called clean.
clean, right.
And you know, that's
I remember. I wish I could remember his name, but he was well known at the college we went to,
mhm.
and he had committed suicide. And
I might not have known about that.
yeah, like I said, he was well known, well liked, and
I
everything.
know, but I was young enough that I might not have been aware. that
Yeah.
somebody committed suicide. That doesn't ring a bell for me.
Well, years later, after I thought about it for a while, the thought occurred to me. I wondered if it was because he was gay
Mm,
and he was hurting very deeply, you know, and couldn't tolerate
it's
the pain anymore,
it's
you know.
possible.
Yeah.
I do know that many of my friends from college who were after your day and were mostly theater majors
Hmm.
were and are shock of shocks gay.
Yeah.
And few, if any of them were out at all, even to themselves then. But some of my closest friends.
Mm.
And when I remember as a young person, because I was hanging around them when I was in high school, and I remember as a young person hearing rumors about so and so being gay around, and thinking that's not doing anybody good because you're probably wrong as often as you're right, and people are getting hurt by this kind of stuff. And
Right.
so I made a decision not to speculate, that it
Mm.
wasn't any of my business, and it wasn't something I speculated about because I saw how much harm the speculation could do. And so when Facebook came along and my college friends started joining, so many of them were clearly now out
Hmm.
and living with partners
Hmm.
who were not the girlfriends they had had in college.
Right.
Um, and they, I, I don't remember, I don't think I was surprised by a single one. I think there's a few that are married to women I was a little surprised about, but that's okay. Um, Again, that's the harm in the speculation is
Right.
it isn't always, and you don't know somebody's whole story.
Right.
Um, but I don't remember being surprised by any of them. I just remember being grateful that they had found a way to a fuller, more loving life.
Hmm. Sure. Um, Two other things I wanted to tell you about. The first
Hmm.
book I read after I came out
Hmm.
was the book Does Jesus Really Love Me?
Hmm.
The author is Jeff Chu.
Hmm.
Came from a long line of Baptist ministers,
Yes,
and he was a journalist. And
became a good friend of Rachel Held Evans.
yeah, which when she passed away, I was, oh my God.
A
Uh,
lot of people were.
yeah. Um, but that was such a great book for me,
Mm,
you
I'm
know.
so glad I'm so
Yeah,
glad that was in your path.
yeah, yeah. It was really, really great. And I watched some videos on YouTube,
Hmm.
which were really helpful also. And it was I was seeking affirmation that, yes, this was the right thing for me to do. I felt in my heart it was the right thing to do, but I was still challenged
Yeah.
in my thoughts,
Hmm.
as you can probably realize. But
Sure.
um, the other thing I wanted to say is that I have a wonderful partner in my life.
I am so glad to hear that.
His name is Mike. He
Hmm.
is a professional snowboarder.
Wow.
Yeah. And he reached out to me. He sent me a message on the internet. He wanted to get together. And so we did. We practically hit it off right away.
When was
He
this?
3 years ago,
Okay.
and here in Palm Springs.
Okay.
And he was visiting here at the time. He was living up in Utah, Salt Lake City.
Hmm.
And so he reached out to me and was like, hey, I have a cat. I would love to move in with you. Do you like cats? And I said, yeah, I grew up with cats, dogs, canaries, fish, all of them. And so our cat, his proper name is Eric, but we call him Stinky. We call him that because he'll only eat salmon.
Oh,
And then after he eats, of course, like any cat would,
yes.
he starts taking a bath. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay. but he's very, very great. So, but Mike is a godsend. He really, really
Mm,
is.
I
And
am
I love
so
him
glad.
dearly.
I am
Yeah.
so glad to hear that. Makes my heart happy, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. Listen, I'm going to let you go. It's getting to be
Okay.
your dinner time.
Yep.
But I thank you so much. And I hope we get to do this again and frequently.
I'm happy to
Um,
connect, Jeff.
Jennifer, it was great connecting with you. I hope we get to do
Oh,
this
it's so good,
again
Jeff.
soon.
Thank you for
And
reaching out.
oh, you're welcome. And I wish you the very best. Okay.
And you as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.